How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Sector 6, and today we've got something that's a little bit weird, a little bit interesting to look at. And again, it's something that's come about because of Shinra Archaeology Department. These guys are up to some stuff. They're up to some stuff. And what they've found is some deleted lines from the latter stages of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So we're going to have a look at them, we're going to have a little bit of a chat about them, because they've created a little bit of a frenzy on Twitter, X. I'm never calling it X, it's Twitter. But yeah, we're going to have a little chat about it. So, like the video, subscribe for future content, but let's jump straight into it. So, these lines show up in the Japanese text file for the PC version of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and there's about 5 or 6 different things that have been changed and tweaked. Some of them are a little bit interesting, a couple of them are extremely interesting, so we'll probably just gloss over the first few and then jump into the really interesting ones. So the first one comes from when Cloud is walking up towards Aerith in the Forgotten Capital where Aerith's praying, and it just shows that there were some additional lines in there from the rest of the party, which seems to suggest that rather than being stuck at the entrance like they are in the end of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, only Cloud is able to pass through and the rest of the party gets stuck outside. It seems to suggest that instead of that, the party actually came through with Cloud, or maybe just after Cloud. So that's a little bit interesting. It suggests that the party would have been present to see what happens between Cloud, Aerith and Sephiroth, which obviously would have thrown a few things into a bit of a chaotic state, because they would have seen that Cloud blocked the sword but then didn't block the sword. So it would have given them a little bit more context on what actually happened in there, whereas as it stands with Rebirth at the minute, they didn't really see any of that. And this is something I'm going to say, I should have said this earlier, but all of these lines were removed from the game. In the final version of the game, none of these lines happen, none of these things take place, so it's kind of a tough one. It does give us something where we can speculate on intentions maybe, and get, a little bit further into the minds of the devs a little bit, but in the end, these things were cut, and we may never see them come to fruition in any way, shape or form, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on when we get to the juicier ones. But yeah, don't forget that these were actually cut, so it's up for discussion how important this is, and let me know what you think about that in the comments below, but I'm going to carry on. So that's the first one. The second one is a line that Barret says where he's referencing a conversation that he has with Cloud, I think, where Cloud's talking about how there are more worlds, and Barret's kind of like, oh, whoa, I don't understand any of that, usual Barret stuff. And it feels like this is a line where Barret's referencing that. I'll make sure everything's up on the screen now so that you can see the conversation that goes on around it. But again, doesn't seem to be anything particularly major or interesting at this point, just a line that was removed. Now this next one, the third one, is a little bit juicier, and it seems to suggest that Sid and Vincent were going to be involved in the Sephiroth Reborn fight. Like they were going to pop up, and they were going to help. I doubt that they would have been controllable. I guess that they would have just had some sort of cutscene influence on the fight, but in the end it seems like it was decided that they weren't going to do that. These lines were removed, and any appearance of Sid and Vincent in this final section was also removed. But it is slightly interesting that they were planning on having Sid and Vincent be a part of this. And it may feed into another one of the lines that was removed in a second, but maybe not. We'll get to that one. But that's the third one. Sid and Vincent were potentially going to appear during the Sephiroth Reborn battle. The next one is, again, pretty inconsequential. There was going to be a moment where, after all of the fighting's done and we're sat at the edge of the water, and Cloud can see Aerith but nobody else can, Tifa was going to sit staring out at the water and say Aerith's name. And I would guess that this is her looking out at the spot where Aerith was laid to rest, which was the scene that we didn't get to see. She's looking out at that spot and just thinking of Aerith. That's what it feels like to me, but that was taken out. And I'm going to guess that that was taken out because they pretty much wanted to remove any reference to that scene. Obviously, you know which one I mean, the one from the OG where Cloud lays Aerith down into the water and she sinks to the bottom. I'm going to guess they just wanted to remove any actual reference to that scene. And we still get the moment where Tifa looks out at the water. I'm going to guess that was where the line would have been said, but no, it was removed. So that's the fourth one. Now the fifth and sixth ones are the truly interesting ones. And this fifth one's probably the most interesting. And what the fifth one seems to suggest is that in the final scene of the game where Cloud tells everybody not to look up, as sort of like a mirroring scene with the part where Aerith tells Cloud not to look up because of the rift in the sky, it seems like Sid can actually see the rift. And I don't know if this potentially connects with the part that we saw earlier, where Sid and Vincent were going to come in and help during the Sephiroth Reborn battle. Maybe there was going to be some sort of suggestion that, I don't know, Sid had had some sort of interactions with the worlds before. I don't know. I don't know what this is supposed to suggest, but it feels like there's a possibility that at some point Sid was able to see the rift in the sky. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that. This could just be Sid taking the piss a little bit. You know, and winding him up like, oh, yo, what's that in the sky? Maybe that's what he was trying to do. Maybe it was going to be a little moment where he was winding Cloud up, and they decided to cut it because it doesn't really fit the tone of the scene. But maybe Sid was actually going to be able to see stuff. And that brings a lot of things into question with Sid. Has he interacted with the worlds before? Is there something different about Sid in the same way that there's now something different with Cloud? In the same way that there's something different with Zack and something different with Aerith? They've all been able to observe these rifts. And if Sid was part of that group that can see the rifts, it begs the question why. But then again, like I say, it could just be Sid on the wind-up. So, I don't know how to feel about this one. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments below, obviously. Do you think there is a possibility that Sid was meant to be able to see things? Do you think that could maybe suggest why Sid's character is slightly different than it was in the OG? Or do you think it's just nothing and he was just on the wind-up? I don't know. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments below though, because it's an interesting one, this. And the next one is equally, no, not equally, but it's quite interesting as well. Because the final one suggests that during the scene between Glenn and Rufus, where Glenn reveals himself to be Sephiroth, that it was actually supposed to be a vision of President Shinra that Rufus was going to see. So Glenn was going to turn into President Shinra, and he was going to say the lines, "How long until we locate the Promised Land? We mustn't hesitate to do all that we can." Now, I think that kind of works, and it would kind of shift up the context of the conversation a little bit and make a little bit more sense, because there are points in that conversation where it would make sense if this was coming from President Shinra. You know, the dreams of the father or the hopes of the father, whatever the line was. It made everyone immediately think of President Shinra. And there is a moment in that scene where we do see a flashback of President Shinra. So it seems that Glenn was going to shapeshift into President Shinra rather than Sephiroth. He may still have shapeshifted into Sephiroth after being President Shinra. Maybe that was going to be part of it. But just an interesting little tweak there. But in fairness, a lot of us kind of got that vibe anyway. We all kind of got the President Shinra vibe. You do have the little flashback moment of President Shinra as well. So I think they probably just felt, A, we don't necessarily need to turn him into President Shinra, but B, it would also be more interesting if Glenn reveals himself as Sephiroth. I just feel like that was probably the angle. I would say that the most interesting one out of these 6 is the one where Sid can see the tear in the sky, because if Sid can see the tear in the sky, or was meant to be able to see the tear in the sky, it does suggest that there's something different about Sid. Or, not necessarily different about Sid, but that the intention was that there was going to be something different about Sid. And the thing that this then makes me think is this going to come to fruition further down the line? Are we going to learn that there is something different about Sid? Like I say, it's a super interesting thing, but all of these lines were cut from the game for a reason. Most of them were just probably because the line didn't feel right, I would guess, or having Sid and Vincent arrive in that moment didn't feel right. But the Sid one's interesting because it could indicate future intent and something that we may see in Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3. Anyway, that's going to be the end of this one. I'm going to look a little bit deeper into this. I don't think there's more missing lines or anything like that. Again, a huge thank you to Shinra Archaeology Department and Turquoise Hammer for finding these files and receiving these files and then translating them. Beautiful work that they do over there. Go and give them a follow if you don't already. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments below about this. Do you think it's nothing? Do you think it's something? Do you think it could be something? Just give me your thoughts in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe for future content, but more importantly than all of that, have a great day.